Hello. Today I will be featuring the IGN Tier 10, the Zao. Now the Zao has pretty much always been one of the best, if not the best ship in this game. As a cruiser, it has always been enjoying a very dominant position, honestly. Whenever you mention the best cruiser in the game, one of the first ships that comes to mind is the Zao. And one of the main strengths it had was, of course, its insane capability to stealth fire. Now, seeing as this is patch 0.6.3.1, stealth firing has been removed entirely. So, shooting, well, you're constantly spotted when you shoot at the Zao now. But ultimately, I don't really feel like it has that big of an impact on the ship itself. The people that are most affected by this were the people who played too passive in the Zao to begin with. They played extremely far back and relied too heavily on the stealth firing thing, which was, the stealth firing thing was intended to be a bonus, not the sole defining factor of the ship, but people played it as the sole defining factor, which of course means that they will suffer greatly because of this patch. But players who understood that stealth firing was just a part of the ship and not the sole defining thing, they will do just fine in my opinion. Now, a bit annoying here, the Z52. If I sailed close to the cap here to back up my Z52 because of course the enemy has no radar ships, so he would have quite an easy time of pushing into B. Like, he could sail right up to that island, pop hydro, and our backup would be able to, the backup he has here, me and the Rune and even the Yamato, we would be able to melt anyone attempting to close in, and well, he couldn't be torped. Well, with hydro he can't be torped, smoking up he can't be radared. It was basically a free cap for him, but instead he just dropped some blind torps and fled. This is sadly a common thing for Z52 players. They are so used to the old Z52, which suffered from the lacking concealment, that they are afraid to adapt to the new style, which I showed in my commentary, which is of course playing it extremely aggressively, going into the capture points and just basically seizing control of the capture point with the help of your hydro. So that's probably going to be a bit of a learning thing for many DD players, and this DD in this example obviously did not know how to do this. Regardless, the strength of the ship, of course, is always going to be the firepower. The sheer amount of damage the ship can pump out is absolutely ridiculous. Oh, the carrier is actually going for me. I turn away because I need to turn in later on, but I don't want to be giving too much broadside to the Kurfürst. I of course run defensive AA, not hydro. And thanks to defensive AA and focus firing the torpedo bomber, I'm able to split the torps and dodge them, and I dropped my speed to almost a quarter or half to be able to dodge the incoming shells from the Kurfürst, and I do get a bit lucky with the dispersion on that last turret. But other than that, I managed to avoid most of the damage, and with the repair and heal, I'm perfectly fine. Now, of course, that right there was an example why I always recommend running a defensive AA on this ship. I recommended it in the past, and that hasn't changed, because if you do get focused by a carrier, if you don't have defensive AA, your anti-air is simply too weak to be able to deal with it. You really need that defensive AA to be able to defend yourself, and running hydro makes you slightly better against DDs, but it gives you a massive weakness, and there's no reason to take that weakness in, because defensive AA keeps you safe from carriers, which makes it much more valuable. Now, my build hasn't actually changed at all. I run a quite tanky, HE focused, and in general survivability and damage focused build, which you can obviously, well, it hasn't changed, it's still the same, and it's still just as good. Now you notice I'm actually just 12.5 km away from this guy. Even before the stealth fire nerf, I wouldn't have been able to stealth fire from this distance, and that's because you don't really need to stealth fire. In a 1v1 versus tier 10 battleships, well, any battleships, the Zao absolutely shits on them. Your armor is so strong, you have the deck armor, which is strong enough to tank it, you got very trollish citadels that are hard to hit. An angled Zao is insanely tanky. In fact, the only battleship that will really cause you a lot of trouble is the Yamato. But if you if I was fighting a Yamato instead of a Kurfürst, I would be keeping a longer distance. I would be fighting him from longer away. But against the Montana and Kurfürst, you can keep the distance I'm at quite comfortably. You just have to make sure that you're never giving him any free broadsides. Now, if you are of course the battleship, if I was the battleship player there and the Zao was doing this to me, well, first of all, I would hope that he's not a good Zao, because if he's a good Zao, the fight will be extremely difficult. Yes, you might have 100k HP, but fires deal percentage-based damage, and the Zao is going to be refreshing them constantly. And of course, the IGN HE damage is amazing, which means even the shell damage is great. So that's of course a very nasty thing to fight. But if you have to fight as a battleship against the Zao doing what I'm doing here, you notice by the way, every time he shoots, I turn in. That makes it very hard for him to get any good hits on me, and any hits on my deck will be bounced by the armor and so forth, so just very hard for him to deal with me. Anyway, if you are the Codeforce, I recommend never shoot full volleys. Never shoot full volleys. In fact, what he's doing here is shooting like one turret every now and then. Well, he's shooting his front and back turrets in desync. That's pretty okay. And the reason why you don't want to the reason why you want to constantly keep shooting in desync, like you shoot one turret, you shoot another turret, is to prevent the Zao from being able to give full broadside, because the Zao actually has pretty bad firing angles. You see how much broadside I have to give to use my back turrets. The firing angles are honestly pretty shit on it, and if you shoot your entire volley at once, well then I know, as a Zao player, I know that it's going to take you at least 24 seconds to reload your guns, 23 or depending on adrenaline rush. So that's 20 seconds I can use to sail full broadside and use all my guns and deal the full DPM damage without any issues at all. But if on the other hand you fire your turrets desync, like you fire your one turret, you fire a second turret, you wait a few seconds, you fire another turret and so forth, then you never really give the Zao the opportunity to just casually give that full broadside and use his back turrets, because if he does it and you have your guns ready, you might be able to score a citadel. And one of course the major weaknesses of the Zao is that it has so little HP. It only has 40.8k HP, which is very low compared to something like the Moskva, which has 65k HP. So threatening the citadel is very important if you're the battleship fighting the Zao. And of course, if you're the Zao fighting the battleship, staying angled whenever shells are coming your way is your absolute top priority. But other than that, dealing with the Codeforce, very easy. Dealing with battleships in general in this ship is still easy. You never needed to stealth fire to be able to kill things in this ship. People who sat at the A line or J line and stealth fired the entire game and then ended the game with full HP and complained about how bad their team was when they had 150k damage and the team still lost, those were the guys who were playing this out terribly. And those are probably the guys who are going to be suffering the most, because they never really learned the other strengths of the Zao, which is of course the armor, the fantastic troll armor on it, and just how strong the ship is when angled. All they really relied on was the stealth firing impact of the ship, which once again, as I said, it's just a small part. You shouldn't. It was never the main part of the ship. Now Montana shows up. I'm trying to avoid getting hit by him because I would love to capture this objective. So if I can just keep dodging his shells, I'm up and finish off the cap, that would be amazing. Using of course the torpedo indicators to get an idea which way he's going. It's going to be hard now because he is fairly close. It's going to be hard to dodge this last volley, I think. Could have refrained from shooting there honestly and just finished the cap. That would probably have been the better decision. And he gets a hit. It doesn't deal any damage, but you don't need to deal damage to reset the cap. So that's the cap reset. It's unlikely I'm going to get it now, and once again, bombers heading my way. I of course instantly pop my fighters, and I run the perk for double fighters, because not only does it of course give you additional spotting against things behind islands, spotting torpedoes, it also helps you in dealing with planes. It helps you significantly. Problem is, once again, the bombers reset me in my cap even further, but the enemy ships are behind the island. I pop defensive AA to shoot down as many bombers as possible. You know, these are tier 8 planes, and they're still able to bomb me. So that just shows you that without defensive AA, you wouldn't really be shooting down much, because the AA is of course one of the Zao's weaknesses. It doesn't have that much anti-air. But the problem is here, I blew my defensive AA, but he actually had another couple of squads left. So you can't see it here, but I control click the torpedo bombers to focus my anti-air on them. So I gained a 30% damage boost that you get for focusing them. The bombers get through, of course. I have to turn away, which means I have to give him that shot, because I can't turn into these torpedo planes. I'd rather eat one torp and just bail right now than just try to turn in a circle into this, because I know there is at least the Montana pushing around the island, and there's also, well, it seems like their entire fleet. So I can't just stay here. I did, however, save my repair, so I could instantly repair the damage, and popping my heal, I of course heal a fair amount, because the damage I took was mostly fire damage, which you heal 100% of. The torps on the ship are fantastic. The torp angles, however, are pretty awful, but it's an okay tool for kiting away when you are able to use, well, when you are able to give pretty much full broadside, they're okay to use. But in general, people tend to attempt to use them far too much, and they end up getting themselves killed. Worth noting, I shot before they came around the island. That's why I never got detected. I shot right before they could spot me, and of course that means I still remained stealthed. And the second time I'm shooting is when I'm going to be hiding behind this island here. So the time I'm spotted is going to be extremely slow once more. You see, he spots me, he tries to shoot back, but I'm already in cover and I'm undetected. And that means I can calmly turn my turrets around and use concealment to my advantage. So yes, stealth firing might be removed, but that doesn't mean that you can't stealth fire in ways like this by using the terrain. Torps, of course, sadly ran out. They got fairly lucky. Of course, these torps are ridiculously fast, which means they are fantastically strong when you're YOLOing something, but they are really not that strong when someone is chasing you, because, well, you need to be so close for these to have time to hit, because they are so fast and they only have 8 km range, so they tend to run out quite often. My guns are mostly turned, so I start picking on the Montana. Finally get a fire on him, break some of his anti-air. Now, Montana shooting from this angle is unlikely to really do too much damage. The issue is, however, there is an Edinburgh with him. And an Edinburgh can shoot my superstructure. He won't do a lot of damage, but as you can see, he's constantly doing damage. And when I only have 10k HP left, losing 1 to 2k per volley all the time, oh wow. And as I said, the torps tend to run out. He would have, if I had maybe 100 meter more torpedo range, he would have died there, but nothing I can do about it. But mostly, my goal here is, of course, bouncing the Montana shells. The Edinburgh I can't do much about. I could, of course, if the Montana wasn't here, I could easily take out the Edinburgh, but the priority right now is really the Montana. I need to get rid of them. I think he used his damage con, so now I just need RNG to be nice to me and give me a fire. Of course, when you really need fires, that's usually the time when you don't really get fires. 3.5k, bit harder hit than expected, and of course I'm still not getting that fire. Finally have a fire on him, and he's down to 11k. But once again, I keep losing HP to this Edinburgh. He keeps chipping away at me constantly. Luckily he doesn't have HE, or he would be doing a lot more damage. The next volley should be killing him. But the Edinburgh actually kills me. It's not even the Montana, but the Edinburgh that kills me. And he dies right after, and we have 996 points, so the game is obviously going to end here. But, I mean, this was a fairly short game. Pretty damn short, in fact. But I still managed to score 214,000 damage. This was my daily win, and I also shot down 26 planes. Of course, bigger issue here was the carrier focusing me so heavily forced me to turn into a bunch of shells I wouldn't have wanted to, or forced me to take a bunch of additional damage. But still, team score, I didn't beat the Mogami, who apparently probably shot down DDs or capped or something. I wasn't really able to do any of those things. I just did what the Zhao does best, which is of course burn battleships. And looking at it, we can see HE damage, not even 100,000, fire damage, a pretty massive 115,000 in a 14-minute game. And my potential damage is 2.3 million. That's of course all those shells shot my way. That's not any torpedo damage. That's pretty much only shells shot my way by the battleships, who tried and tried and tried to kill me. But of course, the Zhao's troll armor and the agility of the ship is enough to survive in these situations. So, is this a big nerf to the ship? The fact that it can't stealth fire anymore? No, not really. It's still one of the strongest cruisers in the game, one of the strongest ships in the game. and just because you can't stealth fire anymore doesn't really have that big of an impact on it. People who played the ship wrong in the past, they will struggle. People who already knew that the stealth fire wasn't really that big of a deal, well, they'll still be doing insane damage in this thing and burning up any battleships they see. Just for the sake of example, I actually played another ZA game just recently. Let's see, where do I have it? Here we have it. And you can see the type of damage. I mean, this is not something super uncommon, getting this type of damage. In fact, this is not a game where we lost, but I still did 221k damage. In this one I had better RNG, I got 21 fires, unlike the 14 fires in this game. And when we look at the damage here, you can see the same thing. 13 minute, 50-second game, 2 million potential damage, and once again, almost double wither, 116,000 fire damage. So the ZA is still kicking ass and melting ships without any issues. The stealth fire nerf had a very minimal impact on the ship, honestly. Anyway, let's move on to my recommended build. I haven't changed it, but it's been a while since I covered ZA, so might as well do that now. Right, starting off, modules, of course, nothing worth upgrading here. Priority-wise, consumable-wise, of course, premium damage control, premium heal, and I'd probably go premium defensive AA followed by premium fighter in that order. Upgrade-wise, main armaments mod 1, aiming systems mod 1. Now usually I take AA guns on cruisers, and you can use that if you want. I mean, it's not like the AA is that bad when you pop defensive AA. You can reach 6 km instead of 5 km. But honestly, I rarely shoot down planes in the ZA. I rarely have to fight planes, rarely have to deal with them. It's mostly just long range Daka and torpedoes, which is of course what this module is the best for. That's not to say AA guns isn't bad, and if you happen to queue up a lot with a carrier with your ZA, or happen to face a lot of them, then AA guns is a very, very good pick. Range, still the same. I don't like the reload. I mean, the reload is still good. Don't get me wrong, the reload is great. But considering how many big open passive maps there are, I don't like being limited to the range that the main battery mod gives me. Steering gears, because IGN cruisers have exceptionally weak steering gears, they tend to break a lot. Rudder shift and concealment. Finally, of course, Captain Perks. For, priority target, number 1. You need both turret, I would say turret traverse first. What was turret traverse? It was pretty bad, wasn't it? Yeah. Turret traverse, and then I'd probably get superintendent for the additional heal, followed by concealment expert, followed by demolition expert, buff that fire chance a bit more. With flags you get this mighty 23%, and follow it up with vigilance. Once again, we're not running Hydra in this build because we want to be able to defend against carriers, so we need vigilance once we actually have to push in. Adrenaline rush, and finally the double fighter plane. This is my build I've been using for a long time. I used it before the nerf, and it's still the same build I've been using after the nerf. Honestly, I don't feel like this ship has changed much, and I still feel this is, in my opinion, one of the best builds. And this is of course the captain I also use on my Atago, because this build works fantastically fine on the Atago, and honestly it works really well on pretty much any IGN cruiser from pretty much Furitaka onwards. Mogami is of course a special case if you use 155mm guns. Anyway, that was my updated ZA commentary. I hope you guys enjoyed it.